I guess I'm just making, it's such an inspiration, this this non-education class that I have to take. It's just political commentary. It's nothing true. It's nothing valid. It's just opinions. If you gave facts, that would be one thing. But here's the deal. And I guess the teachers have made their choice. I mean, even the substitute teacher, she kind of agrees with this. She doesn't disagree with it. She's willing to allow this vile, untruthful, non-factual story that is highly radical and slanted to be presented as truth with no caveat. There's no qualification. It's just, here it is. We're meant to swallow it wholesale. So I guess I don't need to defend her, but I won't tell her name here. But the point is, I haven't, despite the fact that she was more of an educator than the first teacher, the official teacher, the substitute teacher still is 100% on board with this false narrative, this hateful rhetoric. It's nothing more than rhetoric. It's propaganda. And I think Americans need to get reacquainted with that term. You just take a story that has a political content and an emotional charge of hatred against some innocent person, and you present a story that sounds good enough so that people will accept it, and it becomes the fact. It becomes what people believe, even though it's not true. It's a false reality. It's a manufactured story. It's a manufactured reality. It's propaganda. It's indoctrination, and it's what we're meant to receive at Chabot College. It's not actually factual education. This is supposed to be the American style class, but and it's supposed to be about art, literature, music, film, television, paintings, poetry. We have none of this. None of this has been presented to me. Nothing but angry, racist, hateful diatribe full of accusations and slander and words against, people, ethnic groups, and nations, ethnicities, trashing one set of ideals and beliefs, which are actually good, and lifting up and worshiping other ideals and beliefs that are actually evil. They take things that are bad and say that they are good. They take ideologies that command that homosexuals be killed, and they say, this Islam, this is what's wonderful, we need to love this. And the abuse of women that goes on there, I guess we're supposed to forget about that. And, what Saddam Hussein did in his torture chambers to women and to men, and anyone that he just didn't like, anyone that he thought had an opinion that was not, he just didn't like that opinion, anyone that he thought might possibly could be a threat to his power, because it's all about power. It's like, it's kind of like, and I hate to compare it, but it's like Darth Vader. It's all about the power. Gain power, take power, keep power. We're just supposed to forget about that. We just forget about the names of the top Iraqi government officials who were partners and associates of Al-Qaeda. And we're just supposed to forget about the Iraqi Internal Security Service documents that demonstrate that, in fact, the Al-Qaeda were being sheltered by Saddam Hussein, and that's reason enough for a war. And the eyewitness testimony of various Iraqi officials after we went there and before, that said, yes, Saddam Hussein was welcoming the Al-Qaeda into his country with open arms, and that the Al-Qaeda came into his country in large numbers and set up an organization and a base, and were helping to fight against the occupiers. So, and if I had a bunch of rockets. If I was Saddam Hussein, and if I had a bunch of rockets that I know I'm not supposed to have, and I knew I was going to lose the war, I would just launch them off in the middle of the desert where they're not going to affect anybody, and then who's the wiser? They're done. Shoot them into the ocean. Who cares? They would be gone, and there would be no more proof. You know, Saddam Hussein lost all of his nuclear materials and chemical weapons in a tragic boating accident. You know, that's my opinion of that. And, you know, how would anyone prove otherwise? You shoot the bombs, they explode, there's not much left. Maybe some scrap on the bottom of the ocean floor, but who's gonna know? So, but my main point is this, and this is why I made this video. Parents are not responsible for the choices of their grown-up children. You can't judge a parent because of the actions of his children, and you can't judge a child, grown up or young, by the actions of his parents. And parents don't control their children, and children don't control their parents. If you are a senator and you're in support of the Iraq war, okay, I don't expect your son to go to war because of that. You can't control your son. It would not be right. It's not, you know, it's not his destiny. He has to choose his own destiny. Your son, your daughter, the children of a senator, the children of a congressperson, the children of a president, they have to choose their own destiny. If they feel inclined towards military service, great. If not, great. It doesn't matter. It's the choice of every individual whether or not they join the service. It's not based on if you're a good person, you'll join, and if you're a bad person, you'll join. If you disagree with the war in Iraq, and then those senators' sons went and fought, then you would criticize them as being war criminals, and you would say that they fought in this war, so they're evil. So you're going to criticize someone. You're not interested in finding a different viewpoint. You're not interested in learning something new. You want to criticize someone because they fought, or they supported or fought in the Iraqi war. You want to hate someone, so it doesn't matter which one you find. You're just going to find anybody. You're kind of like Saddam Hussein. You just want to kick down the door, because Saddam Hussein was kicking down doors and shooting people for many, many years before we invaded him. And he took them to torture chambers, or worse. So don't criticize the American soldiers who are trying to capture, you know, terrorists, suicide bombers, Al-Qaeda members, and, you know, people who are trying to fight and kill against American soldiers. Yes, we're occupying your country. Yes, we have a reason to, because your dictator was being stupid. He led your country stupid. And so now you're fighting against us. Well, we're gonna kick down that door. But, you know, Saddam Hussein was kicking down doors, making people disappear for years and years. So, but here's the thing. I don't think, you know, I think that's an unrighteous man and a liar. Just not a very credible person, but a schmuck. Really a schmuck. Just an idiot. Just a complete idiot who made this documentary that we were forced to watch. He's a schmuck and an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about, but he says that he knows what he's talking about. And I guess that's enough for him to make a documentary. And I guess people who don't know any better will buy it and pay for it because, hey, it makes him rich. It makes him famous, doesn't it? He's all against anyone getting rich and famous, but he gets rich and famous. He gets a pat on the back. And high five. And who knows what other benefits. Disgusting man. Foolish man. I think he should go to jail for making a false documentary of fake news. I think making fake news should be a crime. You know, I think that there is such a thing as treason against the United States by creating false propaganda to destroy it in a time of war, or not in a time of war. Just trying to tear down the United States and lie and spread slander. I don't care if it's a public a public representative, even if you're a politician and someone slanders you, such as George W. Bush, I think that the person who slandered you should still go to jail or be punished according to the law, because it is a false statement meant to destroy someone's credibility and reputation, both in personal and private life and public life, whether in your profession or in your calling as a government official. That undermines the United States government. It undermines society. Not because you're telling truth, because if you were telling truth, that would be journalism. But you're not telling the truth, are you? You're telling a lie, a perspective, an opinion that is based on manufactured stories. Not facts, but manufactured. You know, you're creating a lie. You're building a fib. You're fibbing. And that's not okay. It's not okay for journalists to do. And so, it's not up to fathers to sacrifice their sons. Senators don't sacrifice their sons. Nobody sacrifices their sons. If you get drafted, anyone has the ability to get drafted. If there's a draft going on, then there's an equal chance that anyone will get chosen. And if we're doing it by volunteer service, then the people who go, they volunteer to go. Their fathers don't domineer them into going because they need to sacrifice their son for the sake of a war for the country. The mind of this documentarian, so-called the alleged documentarian, who made this is a very disgusting mind. It's a very disgusting, it's an evil mind. It's an evil-minded person. A person with an evil mind, someone who thinks evil thoughts, who would even think of the concept that, hey, why don't you go sacrifice your son? Go sacrifice your son. You see these senators, they won't sacrifice their son. You know, a normal, rational, sane person wouldn't think of doing that. Wouldn't think of saying that. He wouldn't go up on the television screen and say such a crazy statement. But the person who made this documentary is not a normal, rational, good-minded, fair-minded, intellectual person. He just wants to destroy, and he's got evil thoughts in his mind, which is why he says these things. And I know that he knows he's lying, and he knows he is, because I think he knows, I think it's a pretty plain statement that fathers don't sacrifice their sons, fathers don't force their sons to go into the military, and that's not what fathers should do, and it's not what fathers ought to do, and it's not what fathers do in general. The military is determined by two things: the draft and the conscription by volunteer. Like joining up by volunteer. It's a volunteer force, or it's a drafted. It's one or the other. It's not both, or it's both at the same time. But it's not a sacrificial system where fathers domineer and force their children into the service. And the fact that this vile, disgusting schmuck who presents falsehoods instead of facts and calls it journalism, this propagandist, I would even call him a religious preacher, to be honest. He's preaching his philosophy, he's preaching his religion, he's preaching his story. It's not a true story. How much more clear can I say that what he's saying is factually false, as well as morally false, as well as philosophically false, as well as historically false, as well as, personally false. And, as far as his emotions are undeserved,